Tonight, we step into a world where beauty had nothing to do with looking healthy, and everything to do with looking like you had never seen the sun. A world where women plucked their hairlines back inch by inch, erased their eyebrows entirely, and painted their faces with poison, all in the name of being considered beautiful. But here's the question that might keep you watching. Would you have been considered attractive in the Middle Ages? Or would they have taken one look at you and whispered, "Peasant"? Before we find out, take a quiet moment to like this video and subscribe to Little Historical, because history is stranger than you think, and we're just getting started. Now, close your eyes for a second. Open them. And let's walk slowly into the medieval mirror. Imagine the face of a medieval noblewoman as she prepares for an evening in court. She sits before a small mirror of polished metal, her maids hovering in the flickering candlelight. In her hand is a small wooden box, and inside it, a fine white powder. She does not hesitate. She dips a soft cloth into the mixture and begins to spread it across her cheeks, her forehead, the bridge of her nose. The powder is made from lead, white lead, scraped from corroded metal and ground into something that looks like snow. It smooths her skin into a flawless, porcelain mask. She looks ethereal. She looks untouchable. She looks, in the eyes of her world, exquisitely beautiful. What she cannot see is the poison seeping into her pores. What she does not feel yet is the slow wasting that will come. Hair falling out in clumps, skin beginning to flake and ulcerate, a trembling in her hands that no prayer can still. But for now, she glows. And that glow is worth everything. You see, in the Middle Ages, beauty was not about health. It was about status. And status meant looking as though you had never lifted a hand to work, never felt the sun on your skin, never broken a sweat. The paler you were, the purer you seemed. The more fragile you looked, the more desirable you became. So women, and some men, turned to the alchemist's shelf. They mixed vinegar with lead, let it corrode into a crust, then ground that crust into a powder fine as whispered secrets. They called it ceruse star. And they wore it like armor. Some added mercury to their rouge, a bright red smear made from cinnabar, which gave their lips the color of fresh blood and their breath the faintest metallic tang. They knew, perhaps, that these things were dangerous. But danger, when wrapped in silk and worn before a king, has always had a strange allure. There is something intoxicating about risking everything for a single night of admiration. A glance from a lord. A whispered compliment. A rival's envious stare. That was the currency of the medieval court, and women paid for it with their bones. And yet, even as the lead whitened their faces and the mercury burned their nerves, they smiled. They danced. They leaned close to whisper secrets into the ears of powerful men, who smelled only rose water and the faint, sweet rot of decay. This was the poisoned glow. And it was beautiful, until it wasn't. But that is a story for another breath. Because before the poison took them, there was something else they had to remove. Something that stood between them and perfection. And it grew just above their eyes. And it grew just above their eyes. The eyebrow. In our time, a well-shaped brow is a mark of expression, of character, even of allure. But in the medieval world, eyebrows were seen as something closer to a blemish, a stubborn patch of hair interrupting the perfect, smooth sweep of a noble forehead. To be truly beautiful, a woman had to remove them. Not trim, not shape, but erase. Completely. And she did not stop there. The hairline itself had to be pushed back, sometimes by a full inch or more, creating a vast, gleaming expanse of skin that began somewhere near the crown of the head and ended only at the bridge of the nose. It was a forehead designed not for expression, but for admiration. A blank canvas upon which the world could project purity, intelligence, and the quiet, terrifying power of absolute refinement. Imagine the ritual. A noblewoman sits by her window as her maid approaches with a pair of small, iron tweezers. There is no numbing salve, no gentle wax. There is only the slow, deliberate pluck, each hair pulled from the root with a soft, wet sound. The eyes water. The skin reddens. But she does not flinch. She has been taught that beauty requires suffering, and that suffering, when endured silently, is its own kind of virtue. Some women went further, using depilatory creams made from quicklime and arsenic, mixtures that could burn the skin if left too long, but which promised a smoother, faster result. Others used pumice stones to scrape the forehead raw, then applied vinegar to close the pores. The goal was a surface so smooth, so polished, that light would slide across it like water over stone. And when they were finished, when their brows were gone and their hairlines hovered somewhere near the middle of their skulls, they would look into their mirrors and see perfection staring back. A face that seemed almost otherworldly. An expression of serene, untouchable grace. But here is the secret they did not speak aloud. That bare, gleaming forehead was not just beautiful. It was dangerous. It drew the eye. It made men lean closer, wondering what lay beneath that smooth expanse. What thoughts, what desires, what hidden hungers. A woman without eyebrows could not be read. Her emotions were a mystery. And mystery, in the candlelit halls of a medieval castle, is the most intoxicant perfume of all. She became a question no one could answer. And questions, once asked, are very hard to forget. Yet even as she erased her brows, she knew she could not stop there. For there was still color missing from her cheeks, a delicate flush that would bring her face to life without revealing her hand. And that, too, came with its own price. And that, too, came with its own price. For even as she sat there, her forehead bare and gleaming, her face pale as fresh cream, she knew something was missing. A woman of the Middle Ages could not look entirely bloodless. She needed a touch of color, a soft, innocent flush that suggested youth, fertility, and the faintest whisper of desire. But not too much. Never too much. Because in medieval Europe, applying rouge was a dangerous game. The church taught that vanity was a sin, that altering one's face was an affront to God's design. And yet, every noblewoman knew that a man's eye was drawn to a cheek that bloomed like a rose after rain. So they walked a razor's edge between beauty and damnation. She would reach for a small pot hidden in the folds of her gown, a pot she would never admit to owning. Inside was a stain made from crushed insects, the cochineal that yielded a deep, bloody red. Or perhaps she used beetroot juice, or mulberries crushed to a pulp, or even red lead, which gave a brighter hue but carried the same toxic promise as her white ceruse. With her fingertip, she would dab the color onto the apples of her cheeks, then blend it outward with a soft, circular motion. The effect had to look natural, as though she had just returned from a brisk walk or heard a compliment that made her heart flutter. If anyone noticed the rouge, she would deny it. She would blame the wind, the firelight, or a sudden rush of pious feeling. To be caught painting one's face was to invite whispers of pride, of seduction, of witchcraft. And yet, she painted anyway. There is something exquisitely tense about that moment, the brush of color, the quick glance toward the door, the silent prayer that no priest or jealous rival would see through the illusion. Because the rouge did more than warm her cheeks. It hinted at warmth elsewhere. It suggested a body that could blush, that could feel, that could respond to a lover's touch. In a world where women were expected to be modest and unreadable, a faint flush was the only permissible confession of desire. It said, I am here. I am flesh. I am alive. And the men who watched her across the banquet table would lean a little closer, their eyes lingering on that soft pink stain, wondering what other secrets her pale mask concealed. But even as she perfected her blush, she knew her hair remained uncovered, and that, for a married woman, was the greatest scandal of all. But even as she perfected her blush, she knew her hair remained uncovered, and that, for a married woman, was the greatest scandal of all. For in the Middle Ages, a woman's hair was not merely an accessory. It was a statement, a weapon, a secret she was forbidden to show. Unmarried maidens could wear their hair long and loose, flowing down their backs like golden rivers, a symbol of purity and untamed beauty. But the moment she spoke her wedding vows, that same hair became a threat. It had to be hidden, wrapped in linen, buried beneath veils, wimples, and nets, locked away as though it might seduce every man in the castle simply by existing. Imagine the weight of that concealment. A married woman rises in the morning and begins her ritual not of adornment, but of erasure. First, a close-fitting linen cap, called a coif, pulled tight over her carefully dyed blonde curls. Then a wimple, wrapped beneath her chin and pinned at her temples, hiding her neck, her ears, the soft tendrils that might otherwise escape. Over that, a veil, sometimes sheer, sometimes opaque, but always a barrier between her hair and the hungry eyes of the court. By the time she is finished, not a single strand is visible. She looks pious. She looks modest. She looks, if she is honest with herself, like a woman who has been buried alive in fabric. And yet, beneath all those layers, her hair still burns with the memory of saffron and sun. She knows it. And she knows that her husband knows it. That is the secret thrill of the veil. It does not remove desire. It conceals it, which only makes the desire grow hotter, more dangerous, more desperate to be seen. But a woman of the Middle Ages was nothing if not clever. She found loopholes. She wore translucent veils that hid nothing while technically covering everything. She let a single curl slip free near her ear, then pretended not to notice. She embroidered her wimples with gold thread and sewed tiny bells into her headdresses so that when she walked, she jingled, a soft, tantalizing music that drew every eye to her hidden crown. Because the greatest power of all is not display. It is suggestion. A married woman's hair, forbidden and invisible, became the most erotic thing about her. Every man in the hall wondered what lay beneath the linen. Every woman envied the secret she carried. And the woman herself, wrapped in her modest veils, smiled behind closed lips, knowing that she had won a game no one else even knew they were playing. But the veil was only the beginning. For there was another part of her body that the church demanded she hide, not from lust, but from sin itself. And that story begins where her forehead ends.